Today's video is brought to you by AG1. New leaked photos of a Tesla Model 3 indicate that the Project Highland Model 3s might no longer have stalks. Plus, if Tony Seba is correct, Tesla might be able to make all of the vehicles needed by 2030. Yeah, that's right. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I'm going to start with this electric article, which has a picture, as you can see right here. Fred Lambert wrote it, so hi Fred. Anyway, as you can read, new footage of a refreshed Tesla Model 3 has leaked, giving a peek at the interior for the first time, including a new steering wheel. Skipping down, and of course I'll leave a link to the original in the description so you can check it out. With the heavy camouflage on the front and back of these prototypes, it has been hard to identify any specific change to the Model 3. But last month, the first picture of the new Model 3 without camouflage leaked, giving us our first proper look at the upcoming refresh. Now, another refreshed Model 3 has been spotted, and it is giving us a glimpse of the interior for the first time. And if we check out the video here from TikTok, sorry, it's not that huge, but anyway, here's the original that you can see, and zooming in so you can see the interior. And yeah, so there's not a ton to see, but you can definitely see the steering wheel. So the big takeaway from this, and you can't tell for sure because as you can see, there is a tarp over everything. While the steering wheel is definitely redesigned and looks significantly different than the older Tesla Model 3 and Model Y, etc., it's not a yoke for one thing. It's still a circular steering wheel, but it does appear from the way that the tarp is sort of draped that there may not be a left-hand stalk, which is the thing that you would use to indicate left and right turns. Instead, it might be going the direction of the Model S and Model X with the little buttons that you push on the left-hand side of the steering wheel. That's just a rumor at this point. Nobody knows for sure, but anyway, this picture is a rather interesting indication that that could be possible. So when will we all see the Tesla Model 3? I'm sort of holding out hope that it will be this coming Tuesday, as in tomorrow when I release this video, because that would be Tesla's shareholder day, and if we're lucky, what they might do is have it on display, the new Model 3, or they might, pull a curtain off of one or something like that during the presentation so we can ooh and ah about it. So anyway, that would be really cool if that happens. I'll keep my fingers crossed that happens within the next 24 to 48 hours, depending on when you're looking at this video. And if you're looking at it a week from now, you'll already know whether I was right or wrong. If you're like me, you think a lot about what you put into your body. So of course that means you want to eat right, exercise, and take care of your body. And one of the best ways that I've found to do that is AG1. This stuff is absolutely fantastic. I really am being honest here. I've been using it since February 1st of this year, and it has made a huge difference. I have so much more energy than I used to. I feel much more virile, and just ask misinformation about that. And I'm able to accomplish so many more things that I had been able to just a couple of months ago. It's got 75 vitamins, minerals, probiotics, prebiotics. It supports your gut health, your immunity, and on and on. And you know what? It tastes great too. It really does taste sweet. It has a hint of pineapple, and it doesn't have any added sugars, which is also really nice. And you know what else is great? If you click the link in the description, you get 5 free travel packs and a year's supply of vitamins D3 and K2. That's a pretty good deal. And lately I've been making use of the travel packs because I've been going to the gym in the morning and having to go straight from there to work. And I do intermittent fasting, so I don't want to eat first thing in the morning. So what I do is I just take a travel pack with me. I fill up the bottle with water at the gym. I put in the travel pack. I shake it up. I drink it on the way to work, and I feel fantastic for the rest of the day. So if you care about your health, your energy, your vigor, and etc., I highly recommend trying out AG1. And you know what? You can try it risk-free for 90 days. So what do you have to lose? So if you want to feel better today, click my link in the description, get your travel packs, the vitamins D3 and K2, and a 90-day risk-free trial. So take it from me, you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And in a couple of months, when you're feeling way better than you do right now, you can thank me. All right, so on to Tony Seba's prediction that there will be a 75% reduction in the amount of vehicles produced by 2030. Tony, if you don't know, is the founder of Rethink X, and he has been banging the drum for years and years and years about the transition to EVs, the transition to renewable energy, sustainable energy, all of that kind of stuff. And he has been very consistently doing the math, looking at cost reduction curves, using Wright's law to predict the declining cost of all of these different components, including batteries and solar and so forth. And if you haven't seen my video on Wright's law, check it out up here. But in a nutshell, Wright's law says that every time you double the production of anything, any kind of widget, whatever that thing is, every time you double the production of that, it decreases in cost by a certain percentage. And EVs have come in at around 28% cost reduction per doubling, according to ARK Invest. So what does that mean? That means that if you have a car that cost $1 million to produce the first car, it'll cost $720,000 to produce the second car, $518,000 and change to produce the fourth car, $373,000 and change to produce the eighth car, about $269,000 to produce the 16th car, and around $193,000 to produce the 32nd car. And that goes on and on and on. So basically, the doubling gets harder and harder to do over time if you think about that in terms of not just one car, but like 1 million to 2 million to 4 million, et cetera, right? It can take a while to double those numbers. And of course, the starting was probably much, much higher than $1 million. I was just pulling a number out of my butt for that example, but I'm just showing how rapidly things go down at the beginning. But then what happens is you get this big fall off and then it flattens out because of course, every time you reduce, some small number by 28%, you're just reducing a small number by a little bit over and over and over again. So what's happened with legacy auto, of course, is that over the past 120, 30 years, somewhere in that area, they've already had all of those reductions and all of those doublings. And it takes a really long time to produce another 4 or 8 billion cars or something along those lines. In fact, many more than that. The doublings have got to be absolutely massive at this point. So basically, legacy auto has flatlined, and the cost of a legacy automobile is about the same cost as it was a decade ago and about the same cost that it would be a decade from now, except that EVs are going to disrupt them. But this isn't the really important point. The really important point is that Tony Seba is saying that there is a convergence of two things that are going to reduce the need for cars by 75%. Number one is that electric vehicles will soon, if they can't right now, we don't know exactly because people just frankly haven't owned them that long, but they should be able to drive about 1 million miles after we get a couple of generations into the vehicles. It is quite possible that a Tesla Model 3 or Model Y right now might be able to drive in that range. Certainly, it can get around 500,000 miles. And again, statistically, somebody's car might break down earlier than that. You can get in an accident. Somebody else's car might last 600,000 miles, on and on and on. But anyway, over the next 7 or 8 years, the battery technology in particular is going to get good enough that these cars will be able to last around 1 million miles. And a traditional gas car right now is 150,000 to 200,000. So to be generous, we could say that an EV will last about 5 times as long as an ICE car. So if you think about that, if you have cars, if you could just go like this and every car would last 5 times as long as they do right now, the demand for new vehicles would drop by 5x. You just don't need as many new cars anymore because people, there is a branch of consumers that purchases new cars. They ingest it into the system and then they might keep that car for 100 or 200,000 miles or something like that. Then they sell it on the used market. If it's a gas type vehicle, that car might only have 1 to 2 more generations of used car purchasers before the car is just defunct. It's not worth keeping it up anymore because it costs too much money versus how much the car is worth and that kind of thing. But if you have a car that lasts 1 million miles, if you have somebody who keeps the car, say 200,000 miles just to make it easy, then they sell it and the next person keeps it another 200,000 miles and then they sell it and another person keeps it another 200,000 miles. Instead of getting a couple of generations of the vehicle in terms of purchasers, you can get 5 generations of vehicle purchasers at a very substantial amount of mileage. I mean, 200,000 miles takes a long time to drive. With standard amounts of driving, that's somewhere around 14 or 15 years, right? And even if you drive a lot, like 20,000 miles a year, you're still going to be able to have that car for 10 years before you need to sell it. And then it still has, that's only 20% of its lifespan if you bought it new. So that's a huge, huge difference. So you have a 5x reduction in the number of cars needed. And then the other converging factor is autonomous vehicles. And those two things are going together. So if you have autonomous vehicles, suddenly you can have these million-mile cars drive that amount in maybe 5 or 6 years, as opposed to 20, 30, 40 years, something like that. Because you might say, look, the body's not going to last that long. It's going to get so out of style, whatever, that people aren't going to want that. And so therefore people will just trash the car even before it's really ready to be trashed. It's not fully, completely exhausted in terms of a vehicle, but people will get rid of it because it's just so old and that the body panels have started to rust out and things like that. But the other factor here that feeds into this is the fact that if we get autonomous vehicles, if Tesla's robotaxi and or other competitors solve this problem, then suddenly we've got these things operating as taxis. So instead of driving them 12 or 15 or 20,000 miles a year, they can easily do 1 to 200,000 miles a year. So you could have a car that could last between 5 and 10 years as a robotaxi and drive that full 1 million miles. That is taking a lot of other cars off the road. And so that's why if you think, hey, look, a million-mile car, that's great, but nobody's going to keep a car for 40 years. That's just not going to happen. Well, the other factor here is that these cars, if they are autonomous and they can be driving around all the time and being utilized to the extent of 100 to 200,000 miles per year instead of like a tenth of that amount, then you're suddenly looking at the capability of all of these cars replacing the entire fleet with about a fifth as many vehicles. Now, of course, Tony Seba and Rethink X have hedged their bets a little bit and said that instead of 20%, which is 1/5, there will need to be about 25% vehicles produced per year, or a quarter of the number that's currently produced in 2030. And here's the really interesting thing. What is Tesla's target in 2030? 20 million vehicles. What is a quarter of the vehicle fleet right now? Well, it's currently around about 80 million. A quarter of that is 20 million. So it just so happens that Tesla is they're aiming to be able to produce approximately as many vehicles as Tony Seba thinks is going to even be needed in the entire vehicle fleet by 2030. Now, are they going to produce 100% of all the cars? Of course not. But what could happen is they might roll off and only produce 15 million or something like that because the demand is just going to collapse and they won't need to make more than that. Or they could make 20 million and there could be another 5 million vehicles sold for random reasons or something. But the fact of the matter is that if Tesla does solve autonomy and they have cars that can drive 1 million miles, if you put those two things together, Tesla can effectively take over, let's call it 80 to 90% of the entire vehicle market. That is kind of an insane reality. It's difficult for me to even fathom that. I'm like, yeah, Tesla is going to be a winner. They're going to be the major producer by 2030 of vehicles. But even I have a hard time like really thinking about the fact that they would be like the only producer. But if Tony Seba is right, and if Tesla develops million-mile cars and they solve autonomous driving first, they've got the two ingredients to reduce the number of vehicles on the road. And this is not just me, this is Tony Seba who is saying this. They've got the ability to reduce the number of vehicles that need to be sold into the fleet per year to a capacity where they can actually produce that number, like 100% of that number, 20 million vehicles per year. So does that blow your mind? It certainly blows my mind, but the math indicates it should be possible. So that is a crazy, crazy potential future. We'll just have to wait around for about 7 years and see what happens. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it fun and interesting and thought-provoking. Definitely let me know in the comments what you think about this potentiality. Am I and Tony Seba completely off the mark? And what do you think about the Model 3 potentially not having turning stalks? And of course, while you're down there, please do like the video and also consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon and my YouTube channel members. Thank you all so much. Your support really does mean the world to me. And if you want to join the team, just check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, success is a possible outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on and on. So check it out. And finally, thanks so much to AG1 for sponsoring this video. If you want to start feeling better today, risk-free, check out the link in the description. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.